objective. Today we are covering the last objective in Unit 8. Today's date, 2/20. I can write and solve percent problems using proportions. Don't put your assigned books away. I'm coming around with a reward.
I can write and solve percent problems using
Show the kids what they mastered and what they didn't master. Then we had to transfer it to our essential sheet for the students. So we've revamped that. So now everything's right here, and they just do it once. We don't have to do it twice. We've got our mastery over here and their dates and everything, so it works really well. Seeing things, like we've already decided we're going to add one more column in at the beginning because we do like the lesson that goes with it. We had it on there at the beginning, then we took it off, and now we're going to put it back on. Okay. Because it's nice to see that essential goes with this lesson. And if we have to go back and review something, we can with the kid.
The objective cards, that was a big goal this year.
I know those goals just seem to be met. But as we go along, we really need to start changing. I mean, I've started taking note where we wanted to like condense some of the objectives because we didn't feel like we needed all of them.
You changed your assessments.
Yes.
We've been revamping as we went along. Our first assessment quarter was just too much.
Too many essentials were covered, and we didn't feel that we could evaluate them well enough. And plus the test was huge. It was tough, that first quarter. So.
And then we found out we could combine certain essentials instead of breaking them apart, like adding fractions with like denominators and another one subtracting fractions with like denominators. Put it together.
Because they're doing the same thing on both of them.
And then unlike denominator.
I was really surprised though that I only had one. How many people picked C for you? 2?
Just 2.
Yeah, so it was like if we knew how to solve it, then we knew when to flip it. We knew we were supposed to flip the inequality if I knew how to solve the rest of it. Mm-hmm. All right.
So maybe if we did those in bell work, and I think good discussion among the kids. I like them talking at their table groups about whether or not they would need a parentheses in there.
Number 2, we're solving the inequality. Are you going to have to flip your inequality on number 2?
No.
Yes? No? No. Why? Good. The 3 is positive, so we're going to keep our inequality in the direction. I'm going to see what my other classes did compared to them. This is nuts. 7 and 8 became an issue in my 5th period. A big issue, and they were strong in my 2nd period. That's interesting. Huh.
Every time I look at my 8th period, I still think that's absolutely why we need to give them big tests in the morning, to rearrange the schedule, to give the state test to them in the morning, because, I don't know, it's just interesting to see how much better they do when they test, not
right, like they did the practice NISA with all the other kids in the morning.
It's interesting. I think sometimes we miss out on some of the benefits of the cooperative learning, as far as really feeling comfortable asking the people that they're sitting around, or sharing your knowledge if you have the knowledge. You know, you should never have a table where 2 people are getting A's on a quiz and someone else is getting a D.
That's something good to point out. I've never really pointed that out to them. But with knowledge and sharing, I do say like, oh, you 2 know the answer, but you know they're withholding information from you. You know, you gotta get in on that. Which one? 2? Compare your answers. Let's get these off the board. Have a good discussion up here. Number 1, the 7 of spades. My Tian, will you do number 1 for us? Okay, not done yet. Number 2, the 4 of clubs. Explanations will come from the 5 of spades, the 6 of hearts, the 8 of hearts. Okay, all right, Jordan, what do we do?
You times 5 and 18, you get 90.
Good.
And then you divide it through 7.5.
Great.
But our book just says, basically, you can use mental math or you can use cross products. They do not use as an instructional strategy to simplify those ratios. I have a little guy in there right now, and he was saying it all under his breath. It was really cool. So we say, what are our 3 strategies? Well, the first one is to simplify. And they've gotten pretty good at that. They would say, if one number can multiply into another one, and they show it to do with the arrows.
Right.
And that way, the arrows can also go the other direction. So if the variable's in a different spot, they might multiply going this way. So when I put mental math, then I put 2 sets of arrows like this to remind them that it can go either way. Then we do this. So kind of making that part a little bit more visual. But the kids who aren't simplifying are the ones that are making mistakes.
And the other thing I think is maybe just continued discussion about how what we've done meshes with the work of 7th and 6th, as far as some of those alignment pieces.
So I thought it'd be good if we could just spend some time talking about ratios, rates, proportions, and I think it works well because we're all studying the same thing right now. So it'd be good just to look at what are we doing specifically.
That's good to know, though, to now
You
we
guys
know
kinda-
to put more emphasis.
Right.
I mean, we do it, and we always encourage them, make sure you simplify first, if you can, but that's good to know.
Something that has come up with us for proportions, like when we start multiplying fractions, they want to do cross products, like when we're solving equations. And that happens every year.
Oh, yeah.
We're dividing by fraction, and so we've just had to make sure we know, is it a multiplication sign or is it an equal sign in between there, because they just want to go to cross products right away.
I think
Yeah,
we'd say
perfect
kudos
time.
on the word problems because that was our best section. I mean, that never happens on a quiz or a test that your best section is word problems, but they really did well.
And this is what I just shared this with Lexi. Because they really, it's a reading issue, I think. That they don't understand where to put things because they don't think about the words. And they're not thinking about the quantities. So we go back to what is a ratio? It compares to quantities. If you can't even name the quantities, you can't make a proportion.
Isn't you do the alphabet ratio first? Like,
Oh, yeah,
you're
letter,
talking about
I call letter ratios.
Letter ratio first.
Set up your ratio, so if it's, you know,
What's it
if
asking
it's
you for?
cats to dogs, put your C over D.
Identify, and I didn't do this on the review or then in homework, you know, to identify by shapes what sides go together.
Okay, my variable lives in a different place. 45. Whenever I see a percent, it is important all by itself. It gets its own shape. This one, the other ones jump out at you. 18 is of what number? See if you can set up a proportion for that guy, compare with others. And he's going to live somewhere. I'm going to need to know what 7% of my total is. Thoughts on numbers that should live in my proportion?
7 over 100.
7 over 100. Nice. Okay? And then I have to figure out a home for my total. Totals live on the bottom. So you're going to put your total here. I would like you to show me green, yellow, red. Can you write and solve percent problems using proportions? Green, I can. Yellow, I'm confused. Red, no. Got some green cards. Okay, great.
To give a quiz after a few lessons. And then that quiz goes in the book, and at the end of the chapter, then when we're taking our final test, if they have mastered the skill, which we really want them to do, we go back and we change that grade. If they blew the first one, like had a 50%,
The quiz grade.
Oh, sure.
they're learning, and we've taught them that this is like practice of a baseball game or whatever. You've got to practice before you get good at it. So that quiz is in there until they take their final test. And then if they pass it on the final test, they've done what we wanted to, learn the essential.
They practiced some more. They did more practice, and
So then we take that grade, we say, okay, your 50's gone now, it's now 90, because
That's beautiful.
you
You've shown-
mastered your skill, and that's what we wanted you to do. They've improved it.
You're celebrating their growth,
Yes,
too.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
and they can see it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny when they're coloring in their colored sheets, they're green and they're red, and it's like we get to the end of a row, and it's like, yes, I mastered that essential. You know, they're just under their breath, you can hear them.
I think really when we set out at the start of the year, I think we've accomplished more than we maybe thought. I don't know that we knew the impact that changing our assessments would have on
everything else.
on everything else we're doing. I mean, it really has transformed like our instruction because it's all so focused on the student objectives. And I think the impressive thing for me with the kids is that I think they've done way more than maybe when we wrote the assessments we thought that they were going to be able to do, especially the explaining of the conceptual understanding behind it. Like when we wrote, tell me why division by zero is undefined, to say that we'd have like 95% of our kids that could tell us why 6 months after we taught it. I don't know.
Right. The retention, and especially keeping the review on the assessments, I think has just been huge. And I feel like to tie that to bell work, I feel like that makes bell work even more relevant. I mean, reminding them daily that these are the 4 review questions on the test. They should be free, but if you can't answer these review questions, then it really hurts your average.
What do we picture us doing, moving on now that we have our assessments?
One thing that I would like to do with bell work even more, and I feel like there's just not time, and sometimes I stop and have them look at their objective lists and say, from the bell work questions I've chosen, what is this? Which objective does this